I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury?
Sergeant Kurt Sheps.
And, sir, can you, for the benefit of our court reporter, spell your last name?
It's Schoeps.
And how are you employed, sir?
I'm a sergeant with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been so employed?
Since 2003.
Now, how long, you said you're a sergeant?
I am.
How long have you been a sergeant?
Since 2011.
Now, I want to take you back to October the 23rd of 2013. Sergeant Sheps, were you asked to assist Sergeant A.J. Pagliari in an investigation involving the disappearance of Yesenia Suarez and her two children?
Yes, I was.
And were you all asked as part of that investigation to conduct an interview of the defendant on that particular date?
I was.
Okay. And, of course, we've already heard testimony from Sergeant Pagliari about that, but you're in the video that we've already reviewed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you also, were you also with him when he went and spoke to the defendant later that night around 2:30 in the morning?
I was.
And how about the next day on October the 24th? I think we've seen the video with regard to that. Is that you in the video with him?
Yes, the 24th as well.
Now, I want to take you, I don't want to ask you any questions about that because we've already heard that interview, but I want to take you specifically to October the 26th of 2013. You recall that date, sir?
I do.
And did you and Sergeant Pagliari also conduct an interview of the defendant on that date?
Yes, we did.
Where did that interview take place?
At our operations center on 1330 Indian Lake Road, Daytona Beach.
Okay. Now, prior to all of the defendant's interviews, was he in custody at the Volusia County
He was,
Jail?
yes.
Now, the operations center you refer to, is that a separate location?
It is, correct.
And
It's a separate standalone building.
so how did the defendant get from the jail to the operations center?
Investigator Pagliari and myself, we picked him up from the branch jail in a marked patrol car, and we transported him to the operations for the interview.
Were there any other investigators that were in the vicinity during the time that this interview took place?
Investigator Ford was also present.
Now, this interview, where did it take place at the operations center?
In one of our interview rooms?
Okay. Was it similar to the ones that we saw in the interviews from the 23rd
It
and
was,
24th?
correct. Yeah.
All right. Was it recorded
It was.
in its entirety?
It was.
Have you had a chance to review the recording of that interview?
Yes, I did.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may do so.
Within pre-mark for identification purposes, at State Exhibit 6Ls, 1 and 2, showing you 6Ls 1. You recognize that?
That is a thumb drive that contains the interview.
And you've listened to this?
I have.
And other than some redactions that may have been made, is a fair and accurate reporting of you and Sergeant Pagliari's interview with the defendant on October
Yes.
26, 2013?
Yes, it is.
And I'm showing you State Exhibit 6Ls 2. Is that a transcript of that interview?
It is.
And you had a chance to review it?
Yes.
And is it a fair and accurate transcription of the interview that is in State Exhibit 6Ls 1?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd offer State Exhibit 6Ls 1 as evidence.
The objection. Over the objection, the item will be admitted into evidence. We have had discussions about these items before. Okay. Well, ID only or the transcript, not evidence. You may do so. You have transcripts for the jurors.
Yes, sir, if we may
Okay.
pass those out.
The same instructions I've given you before about transcripts applies to this one as well, okay? What you hear is the evidence, not the transcript. So pay close attention to the evidence. Can you hand the transcripts to the bailiff so you can distribute them? Again, don't read ahead, okay? I need a copy. Madam Court Reporter, do your best. I'm trying to keep up with it.
I have one.
Okay, we ready?
May I proceed?
Okay, go ahead and start it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Order? Nothing? These up, please.
Double up today.
Just give me 1 second. Just in case you get thirsty. All right, so much. Saturday, it's October 26th, 2013, and this is the fourth day.
Today's Saturday.
Yes, sir. Okay, Saturday, this is the fourth day
For reference and investigation. And from my understanding, we've talked to you again every day since Wednesday, since this began. And it's my understanding that today did you notify one of the guards or notify someone at the jail that you wish to talk to us?
I told him to tell y'all to check the database.
Okay.
Because a while back I remember Ty offered to take me to go away. He would feed the gators and they would eat whatever you give them. Mostly chicken.
Okay. Well, since we had a break in contact with you, what I want to do, like I've done in the past, just want to make sure you're aware of your rights, and then as we can continue to talk about some things today. So I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to ask you if you understand each and every line that I read.
Yeah. My public defender told me not to speak to you guys too.
Well, I'm going to read you your rights, and then you're going to make the decision whether you wish to talk to us or not. Okay?
Okay.
You have the right to remain silent. Do you understand?
Yes.
Anything you say can be used against you in court. Do you understand?
Yes.
You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions and have him or her with you during questioning. Do you understand?
Yes.
If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you before any questioning if you wish. Do you understand?
Yes.
If you decide to answer questions without a lawyer present, you will still have the right to stop answering at any time. You always have the right to stop answering at any time until you talk to a lawyer. Do you understand? Do you understand each of these rights as I have explained to you?
Yes.
With these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to us now?
Yes.
Okay. And where are these gator pits that you're talking about? Would you be able to take us there? We drove you? They were in Sanford?
Remember how far into Sanford? Or what, off what major street?
Well, you used to live over there off of, H.E. Thomas. Was it close to H.E. Thomas? Is it closer to 415? I give you two options.
Yeah,
which one was the one that's probably?
Probably the closest to Sanford.
Well, they're both in Sanford.
Yeah.
Probably the closest to I-4.
Is your gator pit close to I-4?
I've never seen it.
Oh, I thought he took you there before. He never took you there before?
Oh, he offered to take me. I told him I don't go in water if I can't see my feet. I don't go in the woods.
Had this conversation come up where all of a sudden he's like, hey, if you want to feed some alligators, here's a place to go.
We were talking about food and gator tail. You know, country people eat raccoon and all that crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I like gator tail. I know it's 5 ways we eat gators live. You can go over there and just throw them whatever and you'll eat them. You can hook them if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you got a stick, you can back them up if they get too close to you.
This is in, do you think this is in the city where people live?
I don't know.
I was going to say, I don't know if it's around houses. It would seem like a hazard to me. But I asked you if we drove you out there, if you think you'd be able to guide us to where this is at. How do you think you'd be able to guide us if you've never been there?
I don't know, maybe instinct.
Instinct? We talked before, this thing with your brother, no, yesterday we talked, and I shared your story with some of the guys in the office, and one of the things that they were talking about was that you said that you're 100% positive you went there after you dropped the car the first time with Ty. Is that correct? Okay. And that you had a conversation with your brother, and your brother said he didn't want to get involved. Correct? So your brother, Chris, right? That's your brother? Your brother was aware of what you had done to your wife?
No, not really. He didn't tell me
He didn't know details. Did he ask you why you needed to get rid of her car?
I can't remember.
Can't remember?
Can I use the bathroom?
Sure. Sure, we'll take that. Let me, sure there's nobody over there.
What made you think of the gator pit?
I was just being down going crazy conversation with me touch on the last the first lap. That was spent the 4 days.
You get some sleep and you eat.
I really didn't go drinking.
You're still holding together pretty good, so. I think you know the importance of us finding him. Family's distraught right now. I'm sure you can understand.
Ready?
Sure you don't want something to eat, man? I'm sure you're getting to the point you just want this over with, right? Move on from it. What's that? Where else can we look? Computer.
Is there anything else that, any other variations of your story that you left out, whether to be to protect people or make sure that, keep them from being involved, something of that nature that we should know about? Am I going to find any more surprises?
No, that's it.
That's it? Okay. So that thing with your brother, when he came in and said, well, he came over to my house, he was wearing this is what we talked about, kind of caught me off guard because I thought me and you and Kurt had talked about everything that had happened. And so I just want to make sure that there's nothing else, because again, we're out there again today, obviously looking in various parts for your family.
The family basically just wants to be able to put him to rest. And we agree, and that's why we're putting everything we can into finding him. And that's our priority right now. I know you asked something about charging you just to get it over with. And again, that's not our priority right now. Priority is finding them.
Body hurts.
Yeah. Just drink some water, man. You get some water in it. So you drink some so it don't spill anymore.
Yeah, I'm tempted to drink some, yeah. It's off the top, bro.
I'm telling you, water's the best thing for you, man. Well, you can't work without it.
Stay hydrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring a little relief there to you? Yeah.
Brought me a bunch of paper towels, Chris. Yeah. What do you think about any of the other areas where they can be? And again, I really don't, I'm not asking who did what, how. The only thing we need right now is just where we can find them, an address, location, something you can remember that if he did it, it's something that what he said.
Can you take me to the bathroom again?
You can go bathroom again?
Yes.
Oh, cool. That's good. Hold on, let me clean my phone too.
Sergeant Shepps, I want to hit pause there. I want to ask you some questions about what we just saw. This right here was the second time that the defendant in this case requested to go to the bathroom during this interview. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, we saw him, well, let me just ask you, as he stood up to say he needed to use the restroom, the recording and the transcript reflects this as well, indicates that he looked at you and said, just you.
That's correct.
What do you think, what went through your mind when he said, just you? What do you think he meant by that?
I was thinking he was going to just have one person in the bathroom with him, and I was hoping that he would provide more information just to me.
Okay. Now, right before I hit pause there, we saw you leave the room and then go back in and pick up something from the table. What was that?
It was a voice recorder that was on the interview table
And why did you grab that?
to get whatever statement was made on recording.
Okay, you do not have video cameras such as you have in this interview room, in the hallways, and in the bathroom, correct?
At that time, no.
Okay, where was the bathroom in relation to the interview room here in the video?
It's actually right on the opposite side of the interview room. You can see where there's a blind. To the left of that would be the bathroom, on the opposite side.
Okay. And so you took the handheld recording device?
That's correct,
And
yes.
this just picks up audio recording, is that correct?
That's correct.
So after you and the defendant leave the room, he tells you he wants just you to go with him. You get the recording device. What happens next?
We start to walk towards the bathroom, and as we do so, I pass Investigator Ford in the hallway, and I request him to come with me discreetly.
Okay, and why was that?
Just in case something was said, or again, we're interviewing somebody that we believe has serious charges against them, and just for officer safety.
Okay. And so you escorted the defendant to the bathroom?
I did, correct.
And Investigator Ford discreetly followed you?
Correct. When you come around the hallway, it's probably about 6 feet from the end of Investigator Ford's stopped.
Okay, just kind of out of sight?
Out of sight, correct.
Okay, and when I say out of sight of the defendant, correct?
Correct.
All right. So as you escort him to the bathroom, does the defendant actually go into the bathroom?
He does.
All right. And let me just kind of backtrack. His first trip to the bathroom, how did you have him there? He's in custody. How do you do that for security reasons?
Again, he's with 2 investigators. The door would remain open. In this case, it's an open in-door, and one of the investigators would stand in between the door, so it couldn't be shut.
Okay. And on this particular occasion, the defendant goes into the bathroom?
He does.
And what does he do?
He sits down on the toilet, which is shut.
Okay. So you said the toilet is shut?
It is.
And does he still have his clothes on?
He does.
All right. What is he doing when he sits down?
He sits down, and he pretty much just goes into just conversation with me. He never actually utilizes the bathroom.
Okay. Where is Detective Ford at this time?
He is off to my right, about 6 feet away.
All right. So you and the defendant are having some conversation.
Correct.
How was his tone of voice? When I say maybe not tone, but volume. Is he talking loudly? in a
No, it's
normal
similar
voice?
to how he's been that entire day. Very low,
Okay.
monotone.
Are you able to capture any of his statements on the recording device?
No.
And why not?
Mr. Toledo observed the voice recorder in my hand, and he requested that I get rid of it.
Okay. So you were holding it in your hand where he could see it?
That's correct. I was kneeling down because he was sitting on the toilet facing me, and I had it in my hand.
Okay. And where exactly were you positioned?
I was in the doorway of the door.
Okay. Now, so he tells you to get rid of the recording device. What do you do with it?
I take it and I slide it on the carpet.
All right. And so did you try to keep it on?
Yes. I never turned it off. I just put it down on the carpet and tried to slide it away.
Okay. And what happened when you did
It,
that?
of course, the Murphy's Law, the battery came out when it slid down.
So what happened next?
He wanted to check to make sure I didn't have any other recording devices on me. So he made me empty my pockets, make sure I don't have any cell phones on me.
And did you have any other? So what happened after that?
And then he goes into, I'll read from my report.
Well, don't just, if you need to review your
Yeah.
report to refresh your recollection, that's okay, but don't read from it.
No, that's okay.
Thank you.
He asked me in a pleading voice that he wanted to go home, asked me to take him home.
Okay. Did you ask him why he wanted to go home?
I did. And he went into how he just wanted to die He wanted to die where his family died.
Okay. And did he get explicit with you on sort of how this was going to go down at his house? How was he going to die at his house?
Yes. He initiated that I can shoot him. We can take him back to the house. I can loosen his cuffs, and myself or another deputy, right, could shoot him as he's trying to escape, or he can grab a knife and try to escape.
Okay. How did you respond to that?
Well, again, I wasn't expecting that. And I went into how I first asked him to tell me where the bodies were first, and then he replied immediately that he's never going to tell me where the bodies are.
The defendant said, "I'm never going to tell you where the bodies are."
That's correct. Right after my first statement on just telling us where the bodies are first, he responded with, "I'm never going to tell where the bodies are." And then he became aggressive. And that's when I called investigator Ford up, and we concluded the interview there.
Okay, and just so we're clear, when you say aggressive, what do you mean by that?
Well, you can see how his tone was throughout the whole day. When he made that comment, he started to tense up and to put in like he wanted to fight.
Okay, but he never did, right?
No, he didn't have the opportunity. I called investigator Ford up, and we took him out of the bathroom.
Okay. So the defendant never actually went to the bathroom?
He never went to the bathroom, that's correct.
Now, what happened after you took the defendant back into the interview room?
We attempted to review the recording device that we had to see if it actually captured anything prior to it not working, and unfortunately it did not.
So did you get him to repeat any of this information that he had said off camera to
Yes.
you during the interview?
Yes, we came back into the interview room and we spoke to him in reference to trying to see why he wanted to go back to the house and re-engage on what the discussion was in the bathroom.
Okay. And we'll turn the video on here in just a second, but after there was further conversation on the video, did the defendant request a third time to go to the bathroom?
He did.
Okay. And we'll see that on the video as well. All right. May I restart the video, Your Honor?
May proceed.
G. Sema. Julie. I went outside, man, did some thinking. Talked to a couple people, prosecutors and stuff, and where we just came from, reference to our discussion. And again, I don't have a recorder on me, this is between me and you. Can you hear me? The whole thing with me and you going to your house, okay? And you wanting to end your life, and me take your life, like all that kind of stuff. Listen to me, okay? Do you think I could ever do that to you? Semi? I mean, to me, when you come to me and tell me, or anybody in general, tells me that they want me to take their life because they don't want to tell, they don't want to live anymore, you put me in a bad position. I understand the position you're in, and I'll never understand fully. And are you thinking that way just because you want to be with them? Or what are you thinking? Sam, I need to know where your train of thought's at. It does nothing but help me. Is there a reason why you wanted to go back to your house to do it? just trying to get into your head. I'm trying to think, you know?
Because my family died.
So you wanted to die the same place your family died. So you're thinking that you just want to be with your family right now? Well, help me find them to where we can put them to rest peacefully. Because I know you're a religious man. You got a lot of faith in you. And I know you believe that they believe that they would want to be with you. And you will get there eventually, okay? But what about the rest of the family? You know, what about the grandparents and cousins and everybody else? This isn't just about Semi anymore, man. You know that. And that's why they're looking to give you some consideration, because it's not about you, it's about the family. And they're willing to do whatever they can do to bring some kind of closure to this family. Think about it. I'll go get you some water. All right? Is there anything that you're not telling us, Seven? I mean, it seems like every day we get a little bit more and more. Something that you leave out. With the whole thing with the brother. I know, I trust me, we understand. Okay? But to us, it makes you seem like you're leaving things out. I mean, what happened happened. It's in the past. Let's just find these kids, man. Help find your family. Maybe you time to think about it. I'm going to go get you some water.
Do you want to be with your family? I want to put all four of you together. Because there is, make no mistake, Samad, you are going to die. I'm going to die. Everyone who's on this earth is going to die. But the afterlife is eternal, and everyone is brought together. When I die, I want to be buried with my family. Those children and your wife are your family.
I know I would be buried with them.
You do not want to be buried with them?
I know I would.
Why not?
It's a family will know.
Is it because of what happened?
My family doesn't have anybody to bury.
You admitted to what happened to your wife. You say that her family obviously will not let you be buried. If you were to be buried with them, they would not allow it. Am I to say that you are responsible for the other two?
You guys spoken to Jackie and Larry?
I have not. You've mentioned them a few times now. How can they help us? Is your family there?
They were my wife's mentors.
How can they help us find your family?
Can I talk to them?
I don't know. I mean, I'm being honest with you. How is that going to help? If you know something more, will you tell them? You will? You have a number for him? Do you remember? I think I wrote their last name down. Let me check my notepad. You remember their last name, right?
Well,
Webb. Larry and Jackie Webb, correct? They live in Orlando? And you're going to tell them what we need to know? So are you going to tell them where your family's at? You don't know if you're going to tell them? You don't know?
you know, here we go.
And how are Jackie and Larry going to help somebody? I want to let you talk to Jackie and Larry. From what my notes I had in the past, they're in their 50s or 60s. He's the CEO of Kissimmee KUA, is that correct? Did you go to church with them too? They're just her mentors. Do you know anybody else that might be able to give me their phone number, that you have a phone number for? Their mother, her mother? Okay. My friends are working on getting those numbers, or getting a number. He's working on getting you a phone so you can talk to them.
Yeah, use the bathroom. My stomach hurts.
You use the bathroom again?
My stomach hurts.
Okay. Just make sure it's clear. Ready?
No, bro.
Feeling that bad, huh?
Detective Sheffs, I'm going to pause it right here. We hear a lot of banging in the background. What is that we hear?
Well, at this time, Mr. Toledo slammed the door in the bathroom. The bathroom was an open indoor, and he was able to close the door on Investigator Ford.
Okay. And he's barricaded himself
And
in
he
the bathroom?
barricaded himself in the
The
bathroom.
banging, what is that we hear?
The banging, at first, is us trying to make entry into that bathroom.
How so?
At first, it's by pushing and trying to kick the door in.
Okay. And we hear a lot of running around. What is that?
At some point, I leave to exit the building to go to my vehicle, and I have a battering ram and a taser in my vehicle. And
You brought those back?
Yeah, I obtain them, and I come back into the building.
Pause it right here again. Were you and the other detectives eventually able to make entry into the bathroom?
Yes.
And what did you find once you were able to make entry into the bathroom?
Well, we weren't able to open the door at that time. We were able to put a hole in the door. We were able to tase him through the door, at which time it allowed us to push the door open, and we were able to drag him out.
Okay. So you were able to knock a hole in the door,
That's correct.
and you were able to take the taser, put it through the hole in the door, and tase the defendant through the door?
That's correct.
And after you were able to tase him, he was released his hold on the door, and you were able to make entry at that point.
That's correct.
Once you made entry into the door, into the bathroom, what?
Somehow he was able to break the mirror and was using the mirror to cut himself.
Where?
I believe he was cut his throat, and then he was cutting his lip.
Mute the screen, Your Honor. Now, Sergeant Sheps, in the video, you hear someone yell to someone, call 911. Was 911 called?
They were, yes.
And was paramedics, did paramedics respond to the operations center?
Yes, they did.
And was the defendant at that point transported to the hospital?
Yes, he was treated on scene and transported.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, why don't we take a 15-minute break, okay? Yeah, take it. Okay, may be seated. Cross-examination.
Please, the court.
First, please.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You remember me?
I did.
Okay. So, just want to go over a couple things with you. Shouldn't take too long. The jury's seen a number of statements Mr. Toledo made. You're the other guy in the statement all the way through, right?
Correct.
You've seen the October 23rd statement and the October 24th statements. You've seen those, right?
Correct.
So you're the other person in the room, just like you are in the one we just saw today, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So all the way through, you've been involved in the interrogation of Mr. Toledo, right?
For those days, correct.
For those days? Okay, so the days that we saw, then you've been involved in the interrogation, right?
That's correct.
That was what you did, right?
That's correct.
Just want to make sure I can hear you, so please speak into the microphone. Thank you. It's pretty safe to say that one of the things that when I say you, I mean law enforcement, you all involved in the interrogation, but you too. One of the things you all were doing was you'd ask him questions and then maybe you'd get information from some other source and then come in and bring that information back into the room, right?
As far as like a technique, I don't understand what you're asking.
Like for instance, maybe if you don't remember something, tell me, okay? But maybe in the October 23rd statement, he gave you this story, and then at the end, you all were asking him pretty specific questions about that you'd found the car and stuff. And so you'd get information from the outside and bring it in and ask him about it, wouldn't you?
Well, the whole case was very fluid. So
Right.
yeah, information was constantly coming in.
Okay, so you did it, right? That's what you did, right? So a lot of times you'd be talking about something and maybe somebody would get some extra information and then they'd bring it in and ask questions about it, right?
Sure.
Okay. So on the 24th, which was kind of an extended interrogation after he started opening up about everything that happened, you all would bring in more information, talk to him about it, ask him about it in detail, and then go out and get some more information or expand on what he'd already told you, right?
As far as myself,
You or Pagliari, you did that too, right? You asked him questions, right?
yes.
Okay, so you're not out in the field gathering information, so somebody has to tell you what's going on, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you get information, and then you come in and ask them about it, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Pagliari would do that too, right?
Correct.
And you all would talk about what you're doing, right? You know, let's ask him this, you strategize, I assume. You weren't just free-flowing, were you?
As far as
When you were asking him questions, I mean, didn't you all talk about what you were going to ask him and kind of, have a strategy about that?
myself, not so much.
Not so much? Okay. So when you asked him questions, you were just doing that on your own?
They were coming from what was being asked prior or what it was leading up to.
Okay. Okay. So now on the day that this occurred, this was the 26th of October, right?
Correct.
You remember, you've seen the recording of it. Did you remember it independently?
Well, it is 4 years ago, so
I know.
I
Did you remember it independently?
needed the video and transcripts to refresh my memory.
Okay.
Yes.
So did it refresh your memory?
Yes.
All right. And this moment in the video, not this particular one, but there's a moment in the video where Mr. Toledo asked to go to the bathroom for the second time. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And that's the time you walk over to the table and take the recording with you?
Correct.
Recorder with you? Okay. So, I just want to see if this is it.
If he did it, something that, what he said.
Take me to the bathroom again.
You can go bathroom again?
Yes.
That's good.
Hold on, let me clean my throat here.
So that right there, that's when you're going to the bathroom for the second time, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's the recorder you took with you, right?
It is.
All right, so this tape resumes. Right there. And that's just you and him in the room, right?
Correct.
He's been to the bathroom then, right?
As far as the room,
No,
Yes.
he's been to the bathroom the second time.
like actually went to the room or used the restroom?
Well, what you called going to the bathroom, he didn't actually go, right? This is the time.
For the
that-
second time?
Yeah, this is the second time. Yes?
I don't understand what you're asking me, sir.
All right, so he asked you to go to the bathroom, you took the recorder. Did you see that part?
Yes.
Now this resumes. Has he already been?
Yes.
And so whatever it is you described in the hallway, that's already happened.
That was prior to this scene right here.
So it's already happened.
Correct.
Okay. So this is when you're back from the bathroom. He didn't go to the bathroom, but that's what you called it on here, so I'm saying this is when he said, "Can I go to the bathroom, just you?" With just you.
No, this is after that.
Yeah, that's it. So this is after that, right? Yes? I'm not trying to
Yes.
trick you, it's just a question.
No, it's just,
Okay.
you're asking
All right.
the same question numerous times.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
We are.
Okay, so at this point in time, this is after you've been in the hallway with him, or wherever it was you and Investigator Ford were trying to listen without the recording. Is that right?
Again, this is after.
After that, right?
After.
Yeah. So now you're back in the room, and all that's happened. Is that right? This is when he made you throw the recorder away?
That's correct.
Already happened.
After.
This is when you were speaking to him, and he said, "I'm never going to tell you where the bodies are."
That's correct.
He's already said that.
Correct.
You're back in the room after he said that. Yes?
Correct.
Now, you go on in here in a minute to say to him, I can play it if you don't remember, but you say to him, "I went outside, man, and did some thinking. I talked to a couple people, prosecutors and stuff." You remember saying that?
I do.
You have the transcript, it's on page 12. And where we just came from in reference to our discussion, and you say again, "I don't have a recorder on me. This is between me and you." But you say that to him in there, right?
I did.
So you do have a recorder.
I did not have a recorder.
Well, that's being recorded, right?
Okay. But I didn't have a recorder on me.
Okay, so just past that technicality, it's being recorded, right?
It's being recorded. I didn't have one on me, though.
Okay.
Yes.
But you knew it was being recorded, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now you're in the room with him and you're asking him questions about, or you're really not asking him questions, but you say what you say on here. And you reference, I guess, his request for you to take him to his house so that he could have you kill him? Is that what happened?
If you're summing it up, yes.
I'm summing it up.
Okay.
But what you say in here and what's on that recording, that's what you asked him. There's nothing different about that, right? So you talk to him about this. And you say to him, is there a reason why you wanted to go back to your house I'm just trying to get into your head. That's on page 13. I'm trying to think, you know. You remember saying that to him?
I do.
He says, because my family died there. And you say, so you wanted to die in the same place your family died, so you're thinking, you just want to be with your family right now. Remember asking him that?
Yes.
He doesn't really answer you. How many hours do you think you'd participate in an interrogation with him by now?
I'm more than 10.
This day, he didn't act the same way he was acting before, did he?
No.
He was much more depressed, right?
Yes.
You could tell he was depressed, right? Yes?
Yes.
In all of the time in the 10 hours or however much it was you spent with him, he basically said he didn't kill his kids, right?
Correct.
He basically said he didn't know where they were, right?
Correct.
He said that all the way through, right?
He did.
The reason you're there on the 26th is because he asked to see you, isn't that right?
That is.
I just want to play this part. We've gone over a little bit, but I'd like the jury to hear it again. So I'm just going to play a few minutes of this, okay? Sure. Court's permission, may I play it?
Where are you playing? Do you know where you are?
Yes, I do. It's,
Transcript? What's
Play
the, you're going to play from here?
from right here. It's just on page 12.
Page 12?
Yeah, just a few minutes. I'm not playing the whole thing.
Okay.
Sema. Julie. I went outside, man, did some thinking. Talked to a couple people, prosecutors and stuff, and where we just came from, reference to our discussion, and again, I don't have a reporter on me, this is between me and you. Can you hear me? The whole thing with me and you going to your house, okay? And you wanting to end your life, and me take your life, like all that kind of stuff. Listen to me, okay? Do you think I could ever do that to you? Semi? I mean, to me, when you come to me and tell me, or anybody in general, tells me that they want me to take their life because they don't want to tell, they don't want to live anymore, you put me in a bad position. I understand the position you're in, and I'll never understand fully. And are you thinking that way just because you want to be with them? Or what are you thinking? Sam, I need to know where your train of thought's at. It does nothing but help me. Is there a reason why you wanted to go back to your house to do it? Sam, bro, I'm just trying to get into your head. I'm trying to think, you know? So you wanted to die the same place your family died? So you're thinking then you just want to be with your family right now? Well, help me find them to where we can put them to rest peacefully. Because I know you're a religious man. You got a lot of faith in you. And I know you believe that, they believe that they would want to be with you, and you will get there eventually, okay? But what about the rest of the family? You know, what about the grandparents and cousins and everybody else? This isn't just about Semi anymore, man, you know that. And that's why they're looking to give you some consideration, because it's not about you, it's about the family. And they're willing to do whatever they can do to bring some kind of closure to this family. Think about it. I'll go get you some water. All right?
So basically, you went back through the whole conversation in the hall with him. Like you said, you think I would do that. He's asked you to take him back so he can have you help him commit suicide. You go all the way through that with him, right?
Correct.
You're in the room with him by yourself, right? When he said to you, I'm never going to tell you, he just said that out of the clear blue after you asked him, tell me where they're at?
Yes.
So that was his response, I'm never going to tell you. Did he say it in a way that maybe could have been interpreted that I'm never going to tell you because I don't know where they're at?
Overrule.
Did he say I'm never going to tell you because I don't know where they're at?
He told me I'm never going to tell where the bodies are.
That's what he said, right? I'm never going to tell where the bodies are. All right, so you're in the room with him. It's just you and him. You say, well, to rest peacefully. And then you say, is there anything you're not telling us, Simi? Did you say that?
I did.
It seems like every day we get a little bit more and more something you leave out. Did you say that to him?
I did.
So you're in the room there by yourself. Just a few minutes before, he's said to you maybe the most important thing he's said to you in days, that he's not going to tell you where the bodies are, and you never mention it on that tape. Is that correct?
Well, I briefly went over it on page 12.
You think you briefly went over it on page 12. Why don't you tell me where that is?
To tell me, come to me, to tell me when, come to me and tell me, or anyone tells me that they want to take their life because you don't want to tell, you don't want to live anymore, you put me in a bad position.
So you think that's you confronting him, saying, I'm never going to tell you where the bodies are. That's you doing that.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so you spend a second on that. I'm never going to tell you where the bodies are. Instead, you come back and ask him, is there anything you're not telling me? But you don't say, you just told me I'm never going to tell you where the bodies are, so I know where they're at. I know you know where they're at because you just told me that. You don't say that to him.
No, I don't.
You don't say to him, why won't you tell me where they're at like you just told me in the hall? What's the point of keeping this a secret? You don't say that to him. You don't really confront him at all about it, do you?
I confronted them, but I don't say it the way you did.
Well, you don't say it at all. So, what?
Sustain, don't argue with the witness.
Okay. You don't say on there, you just told me in the hallway that you're never going to tell me where the bodies are. You don't say that to him, do you?
I don't say that.
No, you don't. And do you say anything? Well, this tape goes on for a few more minutes, and nobody asks him about it. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you've literally brought in dozens of things for him to look at. You brought in pictures, right? Yes? Brought in pictures?
I don't believe I've brought up.
Okay, well, you didn't in particular, but you participated in the interview in which pictures were brought in front of him, correct?
Correct.
You asked him about those pictures, didn't you?
Correct.
You brought in a picture of a big old knife, didn't you?
Correct.
You asked him about that big old knife, right?
Correct.
He has now said to you, he is not going to tell you where the bodies are. And now the rest of this interview is about him calling somebody his wife may have gone shooting with. Did you tell Investigator Pagliari what he had said?
Yes.
Did you? And did you think that that might be the most important thing he had said to you ever?
No.
You didn't.
No.
So this admission he's made, supposedly, to you with no recording, even though we've got hours of recording, this one admission is the one thing that he has said, and you don't pin him down on his own words. Is that correct?
Well, I know it was
Is
important.
that correct, sir?
Well, I know it was important. And out of the totality of the interview, that's what I was trying to get back to. I was trying to continue the rapport with Mr. Toledo.
He was in the hall 5 minutes before this telling you that he wanted you to help him commit suicide. You went over that with him, right?
I did.
He has now said, and you knew, did you know by then you hadn't recorded it?
I did.
So now you know that that supposed admission isn't on tape. It's not recorded. You verify that he wanted you to take him back to help him commit suicide, but you don't ask him on this recording, did you just tell me you're never going to tell me where the bodies are?
In those exact words, I did not.
Instead, you actually say to him, is there anything you're not telling us? You actually say that, right?
I do.
That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any redirect? All right, may the witness be excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Defense? May he be excused.
Your Honor, we have him under subpoena.
Okay, just keep in contact
All
with
right,
the
thank
state. Next witness?
State Police Investigator Brian Ford.
The witness has been previously sworn.
Good afternoon, sir. Afternoon. Could you tell us your name again, just for the record?
Brian Ford,
And you were, in fact, the case agent. We talked to you several days ago about this case already. Is that right?
that is correct.
When the interview occurs on 10/26 that we just watched, at that point in the investigation, the defendant has already blamed Tyshawn Jackson for the death of the children. Is that right?
That is correct.
The court's previous ruling will stand. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, as it relates to those interviews, you conducted at least one of them. Is that right?
That is correct.
But you observed or participated in almost every single one.
That is correct, other than the one with the dumpster.
The one where he took law enforcement out that night?
Correct.
What was his demeanor during the interviews that you watched or were involved in?
Well, The first one at his residence, he was a little bit nervous, but he seemed pretty forthcoming and like he wanted to cooperate.
Was his demeanor in this courtroom consistent with what you saw during your investigation?
Yes, sir.
And during the course of interviewing him, observing the interviews, and preparing for trial and rewatching those interviews, did you find a large number of inconsistencies in Tyshawn Jackson's statement about what happened?
No, the only inconsistency was in the first interview that we had with him where he left out the dumpster in Sanford. Once he got that out, it's been consistent ever since.
So just the delay in the reporting.
Correct.
And did he provide law enforcement with an explanation for that delay?
Yes, he did.
Now, over the last couple of days in the courtroom, we've heard interviews of the defendant on 1023, 1024, and 1026. We also heard Investigator Pagliari, or Sergeant Pagliari now, discuss a portion of the interview that occurred on 1025. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Based upon the information that was provided by the defendant within those interviews, did law enforcement conduct searches for items that may be relevant to the investigation and ultimately proving who committed these crimes?
Yes.
Did law enforcement go into the home of Tyshawn Jackson on 1023 to collect the initial statement from him?
Yes, sir.
Did law enforcement subsequently thereafter search his home on a different day to look for particular items of evidence?
Yes, sir.
During the course of those two trips into the home of Tyshawn Jackson, was there anything noticed that was aberrant? Blood, signs of violence, clothes that had been quickly discarded?
No, sir.
Were you ever able to find any of the clothing items that was described by the defendant as being something worn by Tyshawn Jackson, either on the night of the 22nd or the night of the 23rd?
No.
So no yellow T-shirt, nothing like that?
Correct.
And in the 1024 interview, the defendant, Mr. Toledo, gave more information about maybe Tyshawn Jackson's fingerprints would be associated with the PlayStation in his house.
Yes, sir.
Did law enforcement ultimately seize that item?
Yes, we did.
Did law enforcement ultimately search for fingerprints on that item?
Yes, we did.
And were there any fingerprints at all associated with Tyshawn Jackson?
None.
During the searches of Mr. Jackson's home, person, and property, what was his demeanor?
Cooperative. He didn't have an issue with it.
Did he consent to the searches?
Yes, he did.
Now, when this interview is conducted on October 26th, had law enforcement already retrieved the cellular devices of Jasenia Suarez, Kevin Dredden, and Tyshawn Jackson?
Yes, sir.
And had those devices been, had the data been extracted off of them?
Yes, they'd been examined, forensically examined.
And when you say examined, does that mean that law enforcement actually sat down line by line?
Eventually, yes, sir.
But not on that day?
Correct.
It was something that occurred later?
Yes.
But the cellular devices had been recovered and retained and preserved?
Yes, sir.
Now, as it relates to the cellular device of Tyshawn Jackson, as you were going through Mr. Jackson, did you look at Mr. Jackson's phone records?
Yes, sir.
The extraction report from his phone?
Yes, sir.
Did you also look at the subscriber records that were provided by his telephone provider?
Yes, I did.
Did you find the 2 deleted calls that he discussed here in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
When roughly did those calls occur?
I want to say the first one was around 3 a.m. on the 23rd, and the other one, I believe it was around 8 a.m. I don't believe I have it in my notes, but it was in the morning after he'd come back from making the ride over to Lake Mary.
Also on the 23rd?
Correct, also on the 23rd.
Were those 2 calls back-to-back, such that there was no more telephone traffic between them?
Oh, yes, sir.
Did Tyshawn Jackson provide an explanation to law enforcement about why he deleted those calls?
He did.
And when you were searching his phone records, did you find that he had consistent behavior in calling his girlfriend strange hours of the night, almost every night?
Yeah, as far as the 3 a.m. call, yes, sir, he had a pattern of calling her throughout the week and waking her up.
And as it relates to the defendant's interview on October 23rd, was he asked about seeing the defendant, or excuse me, was he asked about seeing Tyshawn Jackson at 3 a.m.?
On the 23rd?
Yes, sir.
Yes, he was.
And did he deny seeing Tyshawn Jackson at 3 a.m.?
Yes, he did.
Now, the last thing I want to cover with you about cell phones is during the 1024 interview with Mr. Toledo, we heard several statements that he made about his phone or her phone and whether it was in the purse or in the car. What can you tell us specifically about Jasenia Suarez's device on the night of the 22nd into the morning hours of the 23rd as it relates to movement and usage?
Her phone, her phone didn't move throughout the night or the morning. It stayed there in the area of her residence.
So it didn't travel around in her vehicle?
Correct.
Assuming her vehicle went somewhere, it didn't travel with the vehicle?
That is correct.
And as it relates to the defendant's phone, when did his phone go off that day?
His phone went off around 5:28 on the 5:28 p.m. on the 22nd.
And after that, did it ever come back on again?
No, there was no activity after that.
Which is the one we were just talking about with Investigator Sheffs, or Sergeant Sheffs, pardon me. Do you have a clear recollection of the events of that day?
Pretty clear.
Tell us how it is that that this interview was initiated, and then just kind of describe it as it went.
Yep. Mr. Toledo had made a request to speak with Investigator Pagliari and Sergeant Sheffs, so they provided him the opportunity and checked him out of the jail and brought him over to operations to speak with him. Did that answer your question? Or?
Yes, and then as you were not in the room, is that correct?
No, I was not in the interview room. I was in and out of the AV room, which has the recording devices and monitors so that we can watch and listen in on what's going on with the interviews.
AV, is that audio visual?
That's correct.
Okay. And that room allows you to monitor the other interviews. Was anything else going on that morning?
No, we were the only investigators there. There were some satellite personnel there just helping out behind the scenes.
But there were no other interviews taking place?
Correct, no other interviews.
Were you aware of the defendant's request to use the bathroom during the course of the... Did you follow him to the bathroom on the first request?
On the first request, I don't recall that one. It doesn't particularly stick out in my head. I know for the second and third request I was.
As it relates to the second request, describe to us what occurred and what your role was in this event.
Sure. I was coming out of, I believe it was our office, which is down the hall, which is T's end of the hall that the interview rooms are on. And Mr. Toledo, followed by Sergeant Sheffs, came walking around the corner, and I happened to see him. Mr. Toledo made a right to head up front towards where our bathroom is. Sergeant Sheffs saw me and motioned me to follow along, but to stay silent. So I stayed a little behind as they went up towards the bathroom and rounded the corner. When they rounded the corner up front to go to the bathroom, I maintained a position about 6 or 7 feet away, speaking to Mr. Toledo in the bathroom.
Could the defendant see you from his position?
No, he was inside the bathroom, and I don't believe I could see him either.
So you don't know whether he was standing or seated?
Correct.
You don't know whether he was clothed or not?
No.
Were you able to hear the things that were being said between Sergeant Sheffs and Mr. Toledo?
I could hear pretty much everything. He was speaking in a lower voice, but I could hear, I think, pretty much everything.
What was the distance between the two of them?
The two of them?
Yes.
Well, Sergeant Sheps was kneeling down in the doorway, and from the toilet, I'm just estimating 2-3 feet.
And were you in line with the defendant, or were you around the corner from the defendant?
I was around the corner.
And roughly 6 feet away from Sergeant Sheps?
Correct.
Did you see Sergeant Sheps kneel down and start talking to the defendant?
I did.
Did you see Sergeant Sheps pitch his recording device?
I did.
Did you hear the defendant's statement that was made about the bodies?
Yes, I did.
Tell us how that took place, please.
Mr. Toledo's having a conversation with Sergeant Sheps that went towards, he would like us to arrange for him to go back to the house, and we could loosen his cuffs so that he would make it look like he could escape or was trying to escape, and we would take his life. After that conversation, Sergeant Sheps said, well, tell me where the bodies are, or something to that effect, and Mr. Toledo said, I'll never tell you where they are.
And you heard him clearly say that?
Yes, sir.
Any doubt in your mind as to what he said?
No, sir.
How soon did that encounter conclude after the statement?
Pretty much right then.
And what happened after that?
Sergeant Sheps motioned me to come forward and said, we're done. I stepped forward closer to where Sergeant Sheps was, and he stood up. And we escorted Mr. Toledo back to the interview room.
How long was it before the defendant asked for a third bathroom break?
I don't know if I could tell you. I'm just guessing 30 or 40 minutes.
How long was the interview overall?
Well,
If you don't recall, that's fine.
yeah, I don't recall.
Okay. But the recording that we watched here in court has been edited for time purposes.
That's correct.
So long breaks may have been taken out.
Correct.
That kind of thing. When he asked to go to the restroom the third time, where were you?
Again, I don't believe I was in the AV room. I was, I think, coming out of our office again, and similar situation. Investigator Pagliari were walking down the hallway, and I just joined in with them, if I recall right.
One of the things I want to ask, just to help everybody picture this, what's the distance between the interview room and your office that you keep referring to?
From the corner where I'm seeing them, 20 feet.
So this isn't a big law enforcement megaplex?
No.
Why do you keep going back to your office? What are the things that you're doing?
There's just different things going on. I'm being the case agent. I get information's getting funneled to me. I'm getting asked questions and stuff like that. So it's almost impossible for me to stay in the AV room and answer these questions or maybe follow up information that we're getting. So I'm trying to stay in the AV room, but I'm having to get out to run down information for other investigators. And
on this third trip to the bathroom, you're again leaving your office, and what do you see?
Yeah, I believe I was leaving the office, and I saw Mr. Toledo and Investigator Pagliari heading towards the bathroom again. And I don't remember if I just joined in or if Investigator Pagliari said, hey, come with us. But I ended up going back up front with him.
Okay, and describe the event for us, please.
It just seemed like he was going to go to the bathroom. We walked up front. He went into the bathroom, sat on the toilet like he was going to use the bathroom. All morning he'd been complaining of stomach pains, and I think he'd mentioned the food wasn't palatable to him or something. So took it as that. The door's an inside swing door on that bathroom. I didn't stand in the doorway. I stood probably 3-4 feet outside the doorway against the wall there where I could maintain a visual on him. He sat on the toilet, acted like he's using the bathroom, started flushing the toilet, and it was probably the third or fourth flush, that it just in a snap, the door slammed shut, and I heard it lock.
Now approaching with what's been marked State's Exhibit I. Joel, you recognize the 4 photographs here?
I do.
Is this the bathroom on 10/26, the day of your interview?
Yes, it is.
And is it after everything took place?
That is correct.
Depict the bathroom on that occasion?
Yes, I do.
Does if there are no objections, subject to the earlier objections, will you move 5 feet into evidence of State's next?
The item will be admitted into evidence.
Now, after the door slammed, describe what occurred. Who was there, what happened, how it happened?
Like I said, I was standing directly in front of the doorway. Investigator Pagliari was off to my right, kind of by where the corner was where I had been standing on the second bathroom trip. Sergeant Sheps, I believe, had stepped out to try and get some information or something. I don't exactly recall what he was doing. But the door shut. I reached forward and grabbed the knob just to make sure it was locked and not unlocked before I tried to kick it. It was locked. I yelled at Investigator Pagliari to grab Sergeant Sheps, and then I tried kicking the door open. The door it was a solid wood door on a metal frame. It didn't budge with just myself kicking it.
As you're kicking the door, by the way, could you hear yourself kicking the door in the recording that was played?
Yes.
Is that the kind of loud but albeit quieter banging noise?
Compared to the ram, yes.
Okay. During the course of kicking the door, do you hear anything going?
Not while I was kicking it myself. Sergeant Sheps came around after Investigator Pagliari got him, and both of us stood side by side and tried to kick it simultaneously. At that point, we could see the door open, but it would immediately shut, so we knew that there was pressure on the other side of it to keep it closed. At that point, that's when we started to hear glass breaking.
What glass was in that bathroom?
We had a mirror over the sink.
And after you hear the glass breaking, what's the response? What occurs?
Well, we couldn't get in the door. We heard the glass breaking, and then heard what we thought was Mr. Toledo trying to take his own life with glass by cutting himself.
What do you, Investigator Pagliari, and Sergeant Sheps do at that point?
I maintained the door in case he came out of the doorway or came out of the bathroom. I believe Investigator Pagliari went to try and get one of the ladies that was working in the office to get on the phone and call 911. None of us had radios on to be able to just call right away. So trying to get more help up here, get medical personnel. And then Sergeant Sheps had run out to his car to try and grab the ram.
When he returns with the ram, what occurs?
Sergeant Sheps starts striking the door on the doorknob. It mushrooms out the doorknob. The door still, it pops open, but immediately closes and is still maintaining the lock. Sergeant Sheps strikes it on the doorknob side numerous times before he passes the ram off to me, and I try to hit the hinge side of the door, hoping to break the hinges so that we could just pivot the door in or pop the door out. While I was striking it, ended up putting like pie plate size holes in the door. And it was at that point that Investigator Pagliari was able to discharge the taser through the hole, and we were able to make contact with Mr. Toledo and open the door.
Okay. I'm going to show you some photographs from State's Exhibit 120. If the court, can you turn on the screen, Judge? Investigator Ford, tell us what we're seeing in this first photograph, please.
Yeah, that's the bathroom and the door. You can see in the top right-hand corner above the sink, that's where the mirror was. And then, of course, the door, you can see, the holes in it where it was struck with the ram. The hole on the bottom, I believe, was the one that Investigator Pagliari was able to fire the taser through.
And do you see broken glass on the mirror in this photograph?
Yes.
Is there a better photograph in the next series? That
Yes,
shows it
there
better?
is.
Okay. And also, do you see blood on the floor of the bathroom?
Yes, there is.
Describe to us what we see here.
Again, more broken glass on the floor. You see blood where Mr. Toledo was and the taser sitting on the ground there.
Okay, that's the little gun-shaped device.
That's correct.
When you see Investigator Sheps kneeling in the doorway and talking to the defendant, where was he with respect to this photograph?
In the doorway, I'd say his feet were probably, if they weren't, I'd say they're probably a few inches back from the tile. So, I mean, his feet and knees were almost in the doorway itself. And that's where he was kneeling.
Kind of leaning there against the jamb or in the threshold?
Yeah, he would have been inside. So if somebody would shut the door, it would have hit him.
And this is back during the second trip
That's
to the
correct.
bathroom?
That's correct, the second trip.
Not associated with the suicide attempt?
Correct.
Okay. But again, we see blood on the floor, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Broken pieces of door as well?
Yes, sir.
Next photograph?
That's the sink. You'll see pieces of glass from the mirror that fell in the sink, and then some more blood and pieces of the door.
And the final photograph in the series?
That's the broken mirror.
Judge, if you could turn off the screen for me. Thank you, sir. Investigator, is law enforcement is making attempts to enter the bathroom. Are there additional comments either made by the officers or by the defendant during this event?
Both by Sergeant Sheps and Mr. Toledo.
Can you hear some of those comments on the recording if you listen closely?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Could you tell us what everybody's saying as best you can recall?
Yeah. I heard Sergeant Sheps saying, this ain't the way to go, stop resisting, not like this, and stop it. You also hear Mr. Toledo saying, let me die, after Sergeant Sheps says, or asks him, or tells him, tell me where they are. You can hear Mr. Toledo saying, let me die several times.
And can you also hear Sergeant Sheps saying, tell me where they are, or tell me where they are now?
Yes.
Ultimately, was law enforcement successful in saving the life of Mr. Toledo on this day?
Yes, we were.
And was Mr. Toledo interviewed again after his release from the hospital several days later?
Yes, he was.
No further questions at this point, Judge.
Okay, is he subject to being recalled?
He will be recalled at least tomorrow.
Okay, then we will have him step down by agreement, is that correct? Okay, step down, and then cross-examination will be tomorrow, this witness. Next witness?
State recalls Sergeant Pagliari.
Thank you, you may be seated. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you introduce yourself again, please?
I'm Sergeant Albert J. Pagliari III.
For the record, the witness has previously been sworn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, when you left a little while ago, we had just finished talking about your interview with the defendant on October 25th, the day in which he first discussed his brother with you. I'd like to turn your attention now to October 26th and your participation in interviews that occurred on that day.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us how the day started, please?
The day started with me out as part of a search team. I was notified that Louis Toledo had reached out specifically to ask to Kurt or AJ. And then I went to the jail, Kurt and I, and our Sergeant Sheps and I, and picked up Louis and brought him back to the Operations Center.
Now, when you talk about being on a search team, for what were you searching?
We're still searching for Yesenia and the children.
Okay, so active searches were taking place throughout these days?
Yes, sir.
When you arrived at the Volusia County Branch Jail and picked up the defendant, who picked him up?
Myself and Sergeant Sheps.
Okay. Was there any conversation that occurred between the jail and the operations station where the sheriffs work?
Nothing particular to this incident.
Okay, and as you begin to enter the operations center, did the defendant complain of stomach pains or the food at the jail?
Yes, sir.
Was that kind of a theme throughout this day?
Yes, sir.
As you're initiating your investigation with, or this interview with the defendant, you told us before that your other interviews were kind of information gathering. They got a little bit more, you confronted him a little bit more in each of the interviews. What was the general tone and tenor of the interview on the 26th?
Much the same, still trying to gather information. I had spoken to him at this point 3 days prior in a row, and so I was hoping that since he sought us out, that he had some information that would help us in the search.
Did you allow him to kind of control the interview in that respect?
Yes, sir.
Were you involved in the first trip to the restroom?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay, and anything particularly notable about that trip to the restroom?
No, sir.
Were you involved in the second trip to the restroom?
No, sir.
Is there a reason for that?
Not that I could recall.
Did you hear the defendant, as he was leaving the room, mention to your partner, Investigator Sheps or Sergeant Sheps, just you, meaning just Investigator Sergeant Sheps?
Maybe.
Okay. But you don't recall it offhand?
I don't recall it offhand, sir.
Involved in the third trip to the restroom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I want to make clear before we move on to the third trip, you didn't hear any of the statements that occurred during the second trip to the restroom, did you?
No, sir.
Where were you when that trip occurred?
Second trip?
Yes, sir.
I don't recall.
Anywhere in the proximity of the bathroom?
No, sir. I could have been in the major case office, which was the direct opposite of where the bathroom is.
Just down the hall distance?
Yes, sir.
Now, during the third trip to the bathroom, you were involved in that.
Yes, sir.
Could you describe that for us, please?
It was myself and Investigator Ford. Louis Toledo was in a front bathroom at our operations center. The layout is kind of like an L shape. I was in the elbow of the L, and Investigator Ford was in front of the door of the bathroom where Louis Toledo was.
Where would that be on the L? At one of the ends?
It'd be on one of the ends of the L. If I'm at the elbow of the L, then Investigator Ford would have been at like the top of the L.
Okay, and how far is the distance between you and Investigator Ford?
Maybe 10 feet.
From your vantage point, what do you perceive?
Investigator Ford is watching Louis Toledo. Toledo's in the bathroom. The door is open. The door opens inward. Next thing I remember is the door slammed shut. I look at Investigator Ford. He looks at me. And Investigator Ford starts beating on the door to try to get into the door. I recall something breaking inside of the bathroom. I kept thinking that's not good.
Did you hear the sound of glass as something broke?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Then I believe I went and got Sergeant Sheps. Sergeant Sheps and Investigator Ford tried to knock down the door. Sergeant Sheps had a ram. Sergeant Sheps gave me a taser. Sergeant Sheps knocked in, him and Investigator Ford took turns knocking holes in the door. There was a hole that was big enough for me to see Toledo. He had his back up against the door of the bathroom. I was able to kind of finagle my way in with the taser a little bit. I told him to stop cutting himself, stop hurting yourself. I said I was going to tase him, announced the taser. I deployed the taser. The probe struck Mr. Toledo and had effect. And then he was able to, Investigator Ford and Sergeant Sheps were able to kind of push the door open a little bit, get Louis out into the hallway outside the bathroom, and then we started getting administered first aid.
During this incident, do you recall comments of "tell us where they are" and "let me die," coming both from law enforcement and the defendant?
Maybe. I might have been out trying to see where the first responders were.
The individual that we hear running back and forth and asking for 911, is that you?
That's me.
Ultimately, Mr. Toledo's life was saved and he was taken to the hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and upon his release from the hospital, he was interviewed again by law enforcement. Is that also accurate?
Yes, sir.
Did you participate in any of the interviews to follow the trip to the hospital?
Directly?
Yes, sir.
I didn't. Not directly. No, sir.
Were other members of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office involved in some of those interviews?
Yes, sir.
Do you know the name Vidal Mejias?
Yes, sir.
And who is he within the Sheriff's Office?
He's a sergeant with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office.
Did he conduct an interview with the defendant on November 3rd of 2013?
Yes, sir.
Now, have you had an opportunity to review that recording or portions thereof?
Yes, sir.
And you did that prior to your testimony here today, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm approaching with what's been marked State Exhibit 6 M's, 1 and 2, as well as State 6 M's. You seen that affidavit before, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is that the affidavit of Vidal Mejias as it relates to this recording?
Yes, sir, it is.
As it relates to your review of this particular interview, is it a fair and accurate copy of what is on the disc?
Yes, sir.
Pardon me, that question. Let me ask you again. Is the transcript a fair and accurate copy of what remains on that disc?
Yes, sir.
Are these clips from the 11-3 game?
Yes, sir.
Judge, subject to the state's, or excuse me, subject to the defense lawyer objection, state would move 6 M's, number 1, and 6.
All right, the item will be admitted into evidence.
Sergeant, as it relates to States 121, the interview with Vidal Mejias, where did this interview take place?
At the Volusia County Sheriff's Office Operations Center.
The same place that the other interviews took place?
Yes, sir.
We're going to see the same room, same blue table?
Yes, sir.
On the defendant's left arm, do we see bandages from rescue attempts that were made at the hospital?
Yes, sir.
Do the clips contained on this drive represent either additional information or inconsistencies in the defendant's statements given on 11-3?
Yes, sir.
As it relates to your interviews that you had previously conducted with him?
Yes, sir.
Judge, at this time, state would move to publish 121.
Okay?
We have some transcripts to pass out as well, sir.
Hand them to bailiffs, please. Yes, subject to my previous ruling, the items have been admitted into evidence or be displayed at this time.
Your Honor, if we could have access to the screen. Sergeant Pagliari, I'm sorry to keep busting you on rank. The interviews that we've watched at this point have been long and involved interviews for the most part, is that right?
Yes, sir.
But these are short clips, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Clips taken from a much larger interview?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what happened at work?
Well, what happened was, once I was at work and I seen all the messages were coming through, about her sneaking around with a dude and everything. I gave them the information, the website and all of that. And I went to her job at first, and I went to talk to him initially because I wasn't gonna talk to her. I was gonna tell him, look, man, this is my wife. Just whatever we got going on, just it ends right here. But then he wasn't there. So I went upstairs to my wife, and I was in big. She was like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" She came in, she let me in. She had a cup of coffee. She said, "Do I want some coffee?" I was like, "Nah." I was like, "Yo, let me ask you a question." And she said, "What?" I said, "I want you to be really honest with me. You know what I'm saying? Have you been seeing anybody else?" And she's like, "No." I said, "When you went to Alabama, you ain't get intimate with nobody else or nothing." She said, "No." I said, "You swear?" She said, "I swear." I said, "Swear to me everything you love, even the kids." She was like, "I swear on my kids." So I just put my head down, I grabbed my phone, I slid it to her like that. She grabbed it, she looked at it, she started shaking. She said, "Let's go outside and talk."
Investigator Pagliari, Sergeant Pagliari, is this the first time that you ever heard information that Jasenia Suarez swore on the life of her children that
Yes,
she
sir.
was not having an affair?
Yes, sir.
Clip number 2.
And then she kept denying it in the garage, even in front of her mom too. Every time mom would go inside, she was like, "No, I'm not gonna tell my mother, no. You crazy, how my mother is on me, she'll kill me, da, da, da." I said, "Yo, your mother needs to know the truth." So I kept trying to record her on my phone, but she was like, "Let me see your phone, let me see your phone." Trying to, see my phone or whatever. And that's when I showed her my phone, and I was like, whatever, she knew I was recording her, so she wouldn't tell me in front of her mom. So then we came to an agreement there in her mother's garage, because her mother called me. Guys would talk about it over here at the house. We went to the house, we was there for a couple hours, and we were talking, and then we came to the agreement. It's like, all right, well, we're gonna split. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna go my way, you're gonna go your way, or whatever, this and that. So I went back to the house. I got to the house first, her mother gave me a plate of food. I went to the house, started eating, I took a bag out, started packing some of my stuff. When she got to the house, she was like, "Please stop packing." And I was like, "What?" She was like, "I talked with mommy, whatever, this and that, and mom's right, this and that, I'm sorry, this and that, we should work these things out, whatever." So we talked for a long time. But she started telling me when, like the relationship with them, how it started, and all this and that, and boom, boom. And I was like, all right, well, you want your closure? I said, the only way that this marriage is going to work, continue to work, is if his wife knows. I said, because if his wife knows, then his focus will be totally off you. Now his focus will be to repair his marriage. But if his wife does not know, and me and you, we got this broken marriage now, we're trying to repair it, because we had agreed to go to the pastor, just us, me, her, and the pastor alone. We go to the church when nobody else in the church is there. The pastor rebaptizes us, make us renew our vows right there and everything. We talked about all of that, you know what I'm saying? Secretly with the pastor and everything. We have to let the pastor know, of course, what's going on. But so nobody, because in the church there's bochinche, you know what I'm saying? People talk, you know what I'm saying? So we didn't want to do it. So we agreed with all of that. The last thing I wanted to do was, his wife needs to know. Because if his wife knows, now his focus is off you. He can now focus on trying to fix his marriage while we focus on trying to fix our marriage. Because if not, he's still going to be that sneaky dude. Oh, I got my marriage fine, but I can still buzz her, in the ear, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because he's clear, And that's what I try to explain to her. I say it's important that his wife knows. It's only fair to her that she knows. You know what I'm saying? So I text him from her phone. It was late at night. I texted him. I was like, hey, Shelly should know. But I messed up because I mixed up the names with Shelly and Ruby, because Shelly is, actually her name is Sally, is Mario's wife. So on the second text I said, I meant Ruby, I'm sorry. So I put her phone down, so the whole time we was talking, he was calling, but since her phone has so I went to the living room, to the kitchen. She asked me for something to drink. I went and got her something to drink. I bring it back to the room or whatever. We made some taquitos, and we were just sitting there talking, and I looked at her phone, and I flipped the phone, but I seen all the missed calls, and then the message saying, hey, if you don't pick up the phone, I have to call the head dude from her job. So I gave her the phone. I guess she called him, or he happened to call when she picked up, one of the two. And then they were talking, whatever, and you could hear his wife wailing in the background. Oh, he's like, man, I don't know what's going on. Ruby's over here flipping, this and this and that. I'm like, now's the time. There's no better time than right now. You know what I'm saying? And she's like, Kevin, she was like, huh? She was like, it wasn't me that sent those texts. When she said that, I was like, all right, you know what? Fuck y'all. You know what I'm saying? That's how much control, that's how much manipulation he had on her. You know what I'm saying? Well, you know what? I said, y'all can have each other. I said, y'all meant for each other. I went up, picked up the nena. I took the nena back to the bed. I gave her a kiss. And I was like, and I'm out of here. I left. She said I'm talking about, she was blowing my shit up. You know what I'm saying?
Where'd you go?
I went to the cemetery. That's when I went to the cemetery. Went to the cemetery, I was there. You know what I'm saying? Lloré, I cried to my parents. That's the only place that I ever shed a tear at, is that cemetery. Over there, I cried to my parents, you know what I'm saying? I was just, just stressing, talking, you know what I'm saying? And I was laying down for a while, and I was just like, you know what? I need to do what my initial plan was that morning. Because it's crazy, because that morning, before we left to work, my whole initial plan was to leave my ring on the nightstand, right? Because we were already having problems. My whole initial thing was to leave my ring on the nightstand, because the day before that, I went to my school. I transferred my major to the HVAC rather than the cosmetology. I was working, so the thing was, I was going to work from 8 to 5, and then from school from 6 to 11. So I was going to be busy. That was going to be my whole thing, just be busy. My whole focus on my career in school, my whole career in school, because she was already taking the kids away from me. She wasn't allowing me to pick up the kids from school anymore. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, that was going to be my whole focus, myself and my career, So that's what I was going to do. My friend already told me, yo, come live with me. I already was good. So that morning I was going to leave my wedding band on the thing and say, no, I'm going to leave tonight. But she comes into the bathroom and she's like, look, I'm wearing my wedding band again. And I was like, what's up? She's like, no, because I think that I should wear it, I should keep it on or whatever. And like, I kind of like the way things are going right now between us. And I was like, oh, all right. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, okay. And then that was it. I didn't say nothing. So I left it at that, That's why that morning when I went to her work, she wasn't like, oh, like, what are you doing? She was more like, oh, okay, how you doing, And that's basically how it played out from there. I went back, and when I came back from the cemetery, that's when I was late. I parked the car in the driveway. I laid back like this for a second, and I heard the dog, Mr. Biggs, which is Tyshawn's dog. Ese perro, that dog loves me. Every time he comes running, right, because that's when I looked up, Mr. Biggs. That's when I looked up, that's when I seen Ty was messing with his phone. I like the end of, say the driveway, the door, like the garage door here, but the walkway, the corner of the walkway. And then he was like, Biggs. And I was like, what's up, bro? What you doing? He's like, oh shit, what you doing? He crossed over my grass. He was like, what's up? What's going on? I was like, nah, it's not. I told him I had the problem or whatever. And I was like, fuck it, we're gonna go inside and play some PS3, because she hated me playing the PS3. She couldn't stand that shit. She couldn't stand the noise of the Modern Warfare. She couldn't stand that noise. She hated it. And that was how everything played out.
Sergeant, I'd like to talk with you about several things that we saw in that particular clip. There's a reference that after he left his mother-in-law's house, he went home, he started eating, and he started packing. Is that new information to you?
Yes, sir.
Had he ever said that he was packing his stuff before this?
No, sir.
Just a few moments later, he talks about a plan that he developed with his wife, Jasenia, that they were going to have the pastor rebaptize them and kind of resume their marriage or reinitiate their marriage. Is that the first that you've heard of that?
No, sir, I think he talked about that in another interview.
Okay. But in this particular clip, he makes it clear that that was a conversation they had on the night of the 22nd after the mother-in-law's house?
Yes, sir.
He then goes on to talk about the phone call that happened between Jasenia and Kevin Dredden. And when that phone call ends, according to his statement here, he went to the cemetery. Is that roughly what you took him to say?
Yes, sir.
During that conversation, or that portion of the conversation that relates to the cemetery, he talks about his wife was blowing him up. How is it possible for him to know that if his phone went off at 5:28 the day before?
I don't know, sir.
Later in this conversation, in this short conversation, he talks about the events of the morning of October 22nd, specifically where his wife comes in and shows that she's still wearing her wedding ring. Do you recall that portion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And she makes a point to show him and say that she kind of likes the way things are going between them at that point. Is that what he said?
Yes, sir.
Is that in direct contrast to the affair that she's planning later in the day and the text messages that she has with her husband on this particular morning?
Yes, sir.
Finally, with respect to this transcript, he again talks about Tyshawn Jackson and how he encountered Tyshawn Jackson. What did he say?
That Ashron came out from the house, he was messing with the phone, and that Mr. Biggs came out.
And have you heard this version of how he encountered Ty prior to the 11-3 interview?
Yes, sir.
Is it inconsistent with other things that he's told you about how it is that he came into contact with Ty?
Yes, sir.
We'll move on to the next clip, clip 3.
So the kids come running out because they heard you guys arguing?
No, they heard when my wife fell and all of that. They didn't hear the argument. They heard when, I guess, probably when the loud noise and my wife fell and everything, and that, because she was hitting on me. She bomb pounding on me like she does. I don't hit her. Never hit her. I've never hit her. And the one time that I do strike back is what happened to her.
So she fell.
She fell. She fell against the wooden thing.
Okay.
The
kids ran out.
The kids.
How far did the kids get out?
Well, because my kids, they small, so they can't really see down to the floor because they couch level, so they came out. They had to come out running, and then that's when they turned, and then they was like kind of stuck because they didn't know what was going on. And they was like, what's going on? What's mine? And then they seen they were mommy, and I heard my daughter say, Ty, get out of here, Ty, get out of here. That's when he grabbed my.
Ty came out of the room.
Ty was he was out of the room too.
In the living room. He made it to the living room.
Well, where that area is, it's like basically you could say like a circle area that splits between my living room, my laundry room, the hallway to the kids' room. Just that area right there.
Okay.
That's the same part where the kids were.
Okay. So what did the kids start saying?
The kids were like saying, "Mommy, why is mom? What's wrong with mommy? What's wrong with mommy?" And then I was like, "Ty, get him out of here! Get him out of here!" I was trying to resuscitate my wife. I even yelled. Somebody help me. I screamed. I even opened up the front door, screaming,
I want to focus on the last comment that the defendant made there, Sergeant, that he yelled, "Somebody help me." He even opened the front door screaming. Is that new information as of 11-3?
Yes, sir.
Had you ever heard that in any of your other interviews with the defendant?
No, sir.
Was there any evidence anywhere in this case to support that was actually true?
No, sir.
Clip 4.
But that's when I heard the first two blam blam, and I was like, "What the fuck is that?" And I ran over. I heard another one blam, and then that's when I seen that my daughter was on the floor over here on this side, and then my son was right here on this side, and then he was just standing there on machete with not the machete, with the axe. Ahí fue donde lo tiré contra la pared. Así que, "What the fuck did you do, Ty?" And I slapped him against a thing, and I grabbed my son. When I grabbed my son, I was like, "Yo, Ty, what you do to my kids, man? What the fuck?" And then I got him. He said, "Come on, Lewis, man. They saw what happened, man. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna go to jail, bro. You know what I'm saying?" I said, and I just snapped. You know, I grabbed him. I threw him against the door, against the thing. I slapped him against the thing. Y yo le digo, te juro que lo iba a matar ahí mismo. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, "Come on, Lewis, man, think, man." And then I let him go. I grabbed my son again, and my son's head felt like puzzle pieces. I put it against my clothes, and then blood got on me. And then I heard my daughter, she made like this sound, like, and I put him down. And when I grabbed her, and then that was the last 2 breaths or whatever I heard come out of her, and that was it. And I was like, "It's how you killed my kids, man. You killed my kids." I started crying. I was kissing her, kissing my daughter and everything. I had blood on my face, and then I ran back towards the living room where my wife was or whatever, and I was trying to talk to my wife, trying to see if I could get her back or whatever. And then I just heard him telling me, "Lewis, man, you gotta think, man. Come on, man. Like, yo, we gonna go to jail. I'm on probation." He was just talking at the same time, and I was just lost, man. I was really lost, man. And just really lost at the moment. He was like, "Man, I'll take care of this, man." He said, "Man, you just clean up, man. I'll take the bodies, bro. You know what I'm saying? Just clean up the house, man." And he told me to burn it at one point. I was like, "I'm not burning my house, man. I'm burning my house." You know? But there's nothing more that I can give, you know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying.
So the kids are laying on the floor.
Yes.
Sergeant, I'd like to start early in the clip where he's talking about grabbing Tyshawn Jackson and throwing him up against the door. You interviewed Tyshawn Jackson on October 23rd, is that correct?
October 24th?
Yes, sir. Excuse me, October 24th.
Yes, sir.
Okay. During the course of your interview with Tyshawn Jackson, did you check his body for any injuries?
Yes, sir.
Did you see any injuries at all on Tyshawn Jackson?
No, sir.
Were you present in the interview room on either the 24th or the 26th when the defendant asked for just 5 seconds with Ty that he'd kill Ty? Were you present when he said that?
I'm not sure if it was me or Sergeant Sheps. I know Sergeant Sheps was there.
Okay. But that was said, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any debate that if this occurred as the defendant said that it occurred, he had the whole night with Ty?
Sustained.
No matter what the defendant said to you about what he would do, the proof was that Ty didn't have a mark on him. Is that right?
That is correct.
And I want to go to his last comment about the kids laying on the floor. That's what he said in this interview on 11/3. You heard that, right?
Yes, sir.
What did he previously tell you about the location of the children when you interviewed him and asked him on the 24th?
He had said that his boy was in a tub and that his daughter was on the floor.
And you're clear about those details, right?
Yes, sir. That's what he said.
The boy was in the tub, the daughter on the floor.
Yes, sir.
The statement that he makes on 11/3, does it directly contradict what he told you?
Yes, sir.
Move on to clip 5.
Was there a lot of blood on the scene at the house?
No, not really. You know what I'm saying? There was blood in the mostly in the tub or whatever, because he moved my daughter or something to the tub because for some reason there was mad blood in there. So I know he must have moved somebody in there.
Okay, so he picked up and put in the tub?
Must have put in the tub because when I went back to the room, that's when I seen blood inside the tub. So he must have picked somebody.
Was there a lot of blood in the tub?
Yeah, there was a lot of blood. I mean, I'm not gonna say like something like massacre blood, but, you know, just compared to like a little wound cut, there was blood in the tub.
In this particular clip, did you hear the defendant twice say that the girl had been moved into the tub?
Yes, sir.
Is that in direct contradiction of what he told you previously, that the girl was on the floor?
Yes, sir.
And that the boy was the one in the tub?
Yes, sir.
Move on to clip 6.
He told me drop him off at the corner before the 7-Eleven because he didn't want to be seen with me. He said, "Man, just drop me off here." I was going to take him to his house. He was like, "Nah, just take me over there to a 7-Eleven. He goes, "So that way I'm going to go get something real quick and we're not seen together." And I was like, "All right." So I dropped him off and he walked. And then when I was reversing, I looked back at the car, noticed I had like some old clothes there. So I threw on like a black shirt, some gray pants, I threw them on. And I went towards my brother's. And I went to my brother, I was like, yo, bro, I need your help. He was like, what's up? I said, I need to move the car, because I felt something funny about him. I really felt something funny about him, like, just by the way he was acting.
Who?
Tyshawn.
Mm-hmm.
His demeanor, whatever, just real funny about him. And then my brother was like, no, get out of here, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to help. I'm not going to help you, so I left. And then that's when I went home. I bite myself down real quick, I changed, and I left to go to work.
In this particular clip, he's describing when he contacted his brother. Is that more or less consistent with what you told us about the October 25th interview?
Yes, sir.
The one in which he first told you about his brother?
Yes, sir.
That he contacted his brother by driving to Seminole County after he had dropped Ty at the 7-Eleven?
Yes, sir.
Next clip.
What are your brother?
I went to my brother. It was after a little bit. It was after I dropped off Tyshawn. It was still like kind of dark.
So when you dropped him off at the 7-Eleven?
Yeah, when I dropped Tyshawn off, it was dark still.
You went to your brother's house?
I went to my brother's.
What'd you go there for?
I went there because I wanted to move the car, because I know Tyshawn was acting funny.
Move the car that was at the Publix?
Yes, wherever he told me to take the car.
Okay.
Because he was acting funny, and I sensed it for a reason. He was acting really, really funny, you know. And I was just like, he was just, I don't know, just the way he was, his whole demeanor changed. You know, once everything was all finished and done, his whole demeanor changed and switched into a totally different.
What were you planning on doing with the car?
I was just gonna move it. I was just gonna move it to a different location, and that was it. Even if I was to move it down the block, you know, I was just gonna move it. I just didn't know what was up with him. He was acting really funny.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother said, no, hell no. My brother even punched my arm 2 times. You know, my brother punched the shit out of me 2 times, and he told me if my mom was alive, she would kill me.
So he said no?
Yeah.
What would you do
I just
once he
went
told
back
you
home.
no? You went back home? Sweet.
In this clip, does he describe going to visit his brother twice as it was still kind of dark?
Yes, sir.
If he had been there at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, would it have still been dark?
Yes, sir.
When he dropped off Ty at the 7-Eleven, was it light or dark outside?
It was light.
Okay, clip 8.
And that's when I seen the sheriff's officer, my mother-in-law, and Tyshawn. Tyshawn was walking back to his house because he just finished talking to my mother-in-law and the sheriff. Probably like 8 something already, almost 9.
Almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it was already almost 9 o'clock because, yeah, it was probably like almost 9 o'clock already, because when I looked at the time when I went into the house, I wiped off, it was already like 9:09. I was supposed to be at work at 9 o'clock.
So you told him you did that?
Yeah, I told him. I told him,
man.
listen, I told him everything.
Let's start with, did he in fact tell you about this incident of throwing the clothes off of the bridge
On which day?
at any point?
He told me that on the 25th.
So 3 days later, or 3 days into your interviews, he actually told you about throwing clothes off the bridge?
Yes, sir.
And as he relates it in this particular clip, it's as he's leaving his brother's house around 9 o'clock?
He said, can I refer back to my...
Sure. Page 2, line 14 of the transcript.
Yes, sir. Question again, sir?
He relates it to being almost 9 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Now, the route that he's talking about driving, the 1792 bridge over the river, is that a major route between Orlando and Volusia County?
Yes, sir.
Would that have been a very busy road between 8 and 9 o'clock on a weekday?
Yes, sir.
A lot of people commuting in both directions?
Yes, sir.
And what he claims is that he threw his clothes off of the bridge during that period of time.
Yes, sir.
And then after he did that, he drove home in his boxers. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
That's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying.
Sergeant, during all of your interviews with this particular defendant, did you ever find a consistent statement or a consistent timeline of what occurred?
Before, the things that happened up into the phone call with Yesenia and to Kevin Dredden, up into the cemetery, was consistent. After that, things seemed to fall apart.
So that would be the point at which she's alive and then is no longer alive, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's when his details fall apart, and are things consistent after that?
No, sir.
I have no further questions for this witness, Judge.
Thank you. Is the witness subject to recall or,
No, this will be the last time we call Sergeant Pagliari.
okay, cross-examination? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you tell us your name, please?
Casey Gallagher,
And what do you do for a living?
currently self-employed,
In what field?
digital forensic examiner.
And what do you analyze in a digital forensic capacity?
Digital media, including cell phones, tablets, computers, networks, servers.
How long have you been self-employed?
Approximately 2 years.
And what did you do before you were self-employed?
I was employed by the Volusia County Sheriff's Office.
In the same capacity?
Yes.
And for how long?
Approximately 3 years.
Okay. And what training or experience did you have to qualify you for this position within the Volusia County Sheriff's
While I was
Office?
employed with the Sheriff's Office, I went through numerous training classes in the field of digital forensics, became a certified forensic computer examiner, a certified cell phone mobile device examiner, certified network forensic analyst.
As your role within the Sheriff's Office as a forensic examiner of digital devices, is it your general practice or do you have contact with defendants in that setting?
No,
Okay. Did you have any contact with Luis Toledo in this case?
no.
Were you asked by members of the major case unit within the Volusia County Sheriff's Office to examine particular devices related to this matter?
Yes.
And what exactly did you examine?
I examined several cell phones.
Okay, tell us how that examination is conducted.
You can use a tool called a universal forensic extraction device, which is made by a company called Celebrate. It's a cell phone forensic tool.
What is that? Is it like a physical tool, like a hammer or a wrench?
No, it's a software that gets installed on a computer.
Okay, and how does it work?
What that does is it allows us to plug into the phone and conduct a data extraction of the phone's contents.
Explain that to us.
So what I would do is I would hook the phone up to the computer software using it looks like a standard USB cable.
Like the charging cable you get?
Correct.
Okay.
And then I would execute the software and tell it to download the phone's contents.
Okay, and what effect does that have on the phone
None.
through this program?
None.
Is that the design of the program, is to assist you in doing this?
Correct.
Does it alter the contents of the phone in any way at all?
No.
Okay. Is that the benefit of having a forensic device?
Yes.
Okay. Please proceed.
From there, after I extracted the phone's contents, I compiled a report of those contents and burned them to a CD, which was provided to some major case investigators.
Tell us a little bit about how the phone information is extracted, how it's compiled, and what the report shows.
So the phone information is compiled in databases. There's a database for call logs, a database for text messages, et cetera.
Separate databases.
Correct. And what the phone does is the software pulls that information from the phone and then brings it into a decoding software. So it makes it more user-friendly. So you can read the data as you would as a user. And it's not binary ones and zeros or hexadecimal.
What does it appear like?
It appears as in the program.
Yeah, when you're looking at it on your screen as you're doing an extraction, what does it appear like?
It's just a bar, a status bar.
Okay,
So that status bar starts at 0% and goes up to 100 when the phone's done. And then you bring that phone into your decoding software, which is all part of the same forensic suite. And then it decodes those databases. So it decodes the text message database and the call log database.
okay, and then once it's decoded those databases, what is it that happens? How do you perceive it as you're looking at your forensic?
From there, you have different columns based on the content. So you'll have a column for call logs or text messages. And then you have the ability to start sorting and filtering that information if you want to.
Can you look at each of the columns as it's developed in this decoding software?
No.
Okay, how do you know what you're getting then? If
You have to wait for it to complete. You can't do it on the fly.
Okay,
So once it's completed, then you can go and review all of that data.
okay, and can you individually look through each of those particular categories within the phone?
Yes.
Does it have a category for call history, for
Yes.
instance? Text messages?
Yes.
SMS messages?
Yes.
Photographs?
Yes.
Emails?
Yes.
Essentially, all of the things you do on your phone daily are captured by this program. Is that what you're telling us?
Correct.
Does it tell you about the historic data and what the phone's activity? I mean, give us a sense of what these reports show.
The reports can be different based on the make model of each phone. They're constantly being updated, so what you get on one phone may not be the same as the other, depending on if it's supported. But you're going to get all of the call logs, text messages, emails, if their email account is synced to the phone, pictures, videos, all the user account activity. And then you'll even get third-party application data. So if they had Facebook Messenger installed on the phone, it'll download and parse that information and tell you what those messages were.
At today or points in history or how?
Historically, throughout the length of the phone.
And how long, what is the length of the phone?
Since it's been in use,
Okay.
if that information is still on the phone, it'll decode it.
How does information get off of the phone?
It gets deleted.
Does it, when you hit the delete button, does it disappear?
No, there's still a chance to recover deleted content.
Okay, and how does that happen?
The software recovers it manually or automatically if it's there to recover.
Is it like a secondary stage where it's deleted once and then it has to be deleted again by the phone, or how does that work?
So if you click swipe on your phone to delete, say, a text message as an example,
Yeah.
the phone's memory may or may not overwrite that information with new information, because cell phones, there's only so much storage capacity on a cell phone. So at that point, you, the user, have no control over if that message gets overwritten with new data or if it stays unallocated in the phone somewhere. So the software looks for those deleted data blocks, and if it can recover them, it will recover them.
And is that where you search in the unallocated space?
Correct, the software does that.
Okay. And as it relates to sorting and filtering, I think you talked with us about that a few minutes ago.
Yes.
Tell us more about that process.
So it's almost designed like a large spreadsheet where you can apply filters to data columns and subsets of data. So if I wanted to filter just on call logs at a specific date and time or by contact information, you can sort and filter all that data. Because there is a lot of data on a cell phone. Most cell phone forensic reports are several thousand pages. So you have the ability to go in and filter that data to try and minimize it.
And as it relates to a filter of this data, can you search for particular things like calls that occurred on October 22nd, 2013?
Yes,
Can you search for messages on that same date?
yes,
Can you search for calls or messages on that date from a particular person?
yes.
Are you able to, after you've found those calls and messages, are you able then to take them into an isolation or an isolated area and work with that data?
Yes.
How is that done?
What you can do is you can apply the filter based on whatever you want. If it was a specific text message on a specific day, you can input those parameters and it'll give you a result. And then you can generate a separate PDF report or spreadsheet report based on just that content.
Okay. Again, it doesn't do anything at all to the phone though, right, or to the data?
No,
Just that you're sorting and filtering it doesn't have any effect on the information.
that's correct.
just like opening a new page, essentially, or a new spreadsheet.
Yes, kind of.
Did you do any individual inspection of the phones or the extractions that you completed with respect to these phones?
No.
What is your role in this process?
I did the data extractions on the phones, so I downloaded the content, generated a report, and burned it to a disk. I never looked at any of the content.
And the report that you're talking about, we're not talking about a page or two. We're talking about the thousands of pages you've
Correct.
discussed. And does that report contain all of the information that's unique to that person's phone?
Yes.
All of the user data and the text messages, phone calls, that kind of thing that's on there?
Yes.
When did you, well, strike that. What did you do with these reports after you assembled them and burned them to disk?
I gave them to major case investigators.
Okay, would Brian Ford have been a major case investigator back in 2013?
Yes.
When did you leave the sheriff's office or the employment there?
2015?
So obviously prior to today.
Yes.
Did you have a partner in the forensic unit?
Yes.
As it relates to digital evidence?
Yes. Investigator Keith Ernie?
Okay. And would Keith Ernie have been able to access your work or the data created in this case?
Yes.
Would he have been able to sort and filter it as you've discussed with us here today?
Yes.
One moment, please, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, sir.
All right, any cross-examination? All right, thank you. May the witness be excused. State?
Yes, sir.
Pence. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think this is a logical point in time to break for the day. I'm going to ask you to leave the transcripts, if you have any of them, in your chairs, along with your notes face down. And remind you not to talk about the case with anyone, not to read anything about the case, not to look up any words, maps, or people in the computer. Don't do any of those things. And don't talk among yourselves or with anybody else about the case. See you tomorrow at 9.